This week on The Perfect Scam. So when you first called them and said, hey, this payment is bounced, and they said, we're going to send a check. At that point, did you already realize you were in trouble, or were you somewhere in the middle?
Then I was realizing that I was in trouble. I started panicking at that point because
You got to pay rent, right?
I got to pay rent. I don't know how it's going to happen, and I've got no resources.
Welcome back to The Perfect Scam. I'm your host, Bob Sullivan. You're hired. Those can be two of the most beautiful words in the English language, especially if you really need the job. But precisely because job seekers can be under so much pressure, they are often vulnerable to manipulation. Job scams have been around for a while, but they're changing, evolving, and being combined with other kinds of scams. If you're looking for a job online or know someone who is, you're going to want to listen carefully to today's story. It involves a woman named Cathy Jr. in Utah who lives with her husband in an assisted living facility. She's really charming. In fact, she considers herself part of the welcoming committee in the place for new residents who sometimes have a hard time adjusting. So, let's begin there.
I got remarried, and we had my husband was falling. We had a condo in downtown Salt Lake, but he wasn't able to walk the short distance down the hallway to the bathroom by himself. So he was concerned because he'd been falling and we got COVID. We needed to get someplace where if something happened to me, he would be safe and I would be safe no matter what.
But Cathy treated the change like a lot of other things in her life, a bit of an adventure. She's got a really positive attitude.
When we started looking at places to go, we had a senior advisor that we worked with. And she said, you two will be an addition to any community. It doesn't matter which one you select. They will be happy to have you. And we thought that was really sweet of her to say.
Well, and I'm sure that's 100% true. I can tell from your voice. But as anyone who's looked into it knows, it's a big financial decision. Assisted living is a lot more expensive than where you were living, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. We went from $1,000 a month to $5,000.
Oh my God. Wow. And that's where our story really begins. Because recently, Medicaid stopped helping pay for that, and the couple had to take out a loan to hire a lawyer to appeal the decision. And while that was going on, Cathy decided she had to do something to help with the family income. How long had you been retired before you decided to go back to work like this?
I retired in January of 2019. So this was just in 2024. So it had been about 5 years.
Yeah, it must be a hard decision to have to go back to work after 5 years.
Yeah, I was enjoying retirement.
So she fixed up her resume and started looking for a job. But let's back up just a bit and hear about that resume. Cathy has led quite the life. She was in the Army Reserve for 14 years. Wow, what did you do?
I was administrator.
Where were you?
I did all kinds of things for many different outfits. I was on a unit that was in Kalispell, Montana. It was a water supply unit. And so I kept up their regs, make sure they got paid, those kinds of wonderful things. And then I moved to Colorado, and that was an infantry unit. So I had to teach other ladies who couldn't at that time be in the regular infantry the things that they needed to know because they were being moved to administrators. And then I got moved back to Montana. My ex-husband was military, so we moved a little bit. I got back to Montana because he went to Korea. And I was with that Army the water supply unit there in Kalispell. And then we went to Germany. I was on a brief hold in Germany because they didn't have an Army Reserve unit over there. It was all active Army. So when I had to wait until I came back to Kalispell to go back to the reserves. And then I did reserve. I was a reserve technician in California, right on the beach on Camp Pendleton. A brand new building. It was kind of fun.
You saw a lot in the Army Reserves, didn't you?
I did.
Oh, that's great.
The unit that I was in California was light amphibious recovery crafts.
Oh,
They
wow.
had vehicles that you could drive a truck up on, and then they'd go out in the ocean.
Wow.
So we did all kinds of things.
I'm sure you're very proud of the time you worked there.
Yes. Yes, I love the Army Reserves.
Once she left the Army Reserves, she had several more important jobs after that.
Well, I was a wife and a mother, and when I got divorced the second time, I needed something more substantial. I had studied as an electronic engineer. I wasn't able to finish, but I was able to get enough so I could provide for my family, and I started working as an R&D tech for a company doing process equipment for the semiconductor industry. So I've done a lot of different things.
So when she decides to come out of retirement, Cathy has plenty of experience and skills that make her employable, but she really wants to work from home. So, like many people do these days, she puts her resume online, and almost immediately, she gets a bite.
And I had this company call me, and they said they thought that I'd be a great candidate for the work that they needed done. They made sense. I checked out Better Business Bureau. It looked like they were legit. So I said yes.
And what was the company called?
P&P Ship.
And did they have some kind of job interview with you or something?
Yes. They called me, the shipping manager called me, and she said, I think from your resume, you look like you're a perfect fit.
The job sounds perfect for someone who wants to work from home.
And all I had to do was acknowledge that I'd received packages and then put pictures of what they needed on the portal, post them into the portal, and then the customer would take those pictures, look at them, see if it was what they wanted, because supposedly these were going to customers that were overseas, expats and whatever that wanted American products. Repackage them and get them ready, and then I'd get a label that the customer supposedly had paid for to get them off to UPS, FedEx, whatever the customer wanted to, however they wanted to ship it. And so that was a pretty simple process.
Was there some kind of training when you got hired? How did that work?
There is training. It's done online. They have a presentation that they put together, and it just tells you what you need to do with the package, how to process it, what needs to happen, and then what the back end process was. And that was all I needed to do was get those shipped out and get them timely. They wanted them within just like within an hour or 2 hours, something like that. And we were able to do that.
Speed is key, she's told, but the pay is pretty good.
I was supposed to get a base salary whether I did anything or not, because they said the base salary I think was $1,800, and then you got $40 a package for getting them shipped out timely. If you had to go pick some up, which I did pick some up, you got an extra bonus for that.
You got a bonus for doing it quickly too, right?
Yeah.
The opportunity sounds ideal, so Cathy accepts the job and starts working right away. There's an online portal she uses to log her work, to message with bosses. It's all very organized.
You logged in, all you had to log in was the pictures. It was easier than that even. The serial numbers were on the pictures. That was part of what we had to take. The pictures of the items and what they were. Some of them were just bracelets or there was one that was just a little gold bar, all kinds of things. Some of it was really small, some of it was larger, but for the most part, it was an easy job.
But it was a professional looking website that said P&P Ship on the top, right? And you had a login or something like that?
You had login, they had mail on there. You could check with people and see what's going on. They had a message board, and they were still recruiting others. And they had the links on that to the training. So you just clicked on a link and you got the training, and everything was there. If you needed to message the management, everything was there. I had phone calls from the incoming shipping manager, the outgoing shipping manager, and the shipping manager overall. Those 3 people I had phone numbers for.
Remember the bit about getting a bonus for delivering packages quickly? Well, Cathy and her husband are well suited to do that.
We both have wheelchairs. So we'd just put both of them, put the packages on our wheelchairs, and off we'd go.
And you'd motor on down to the post office, the two of you?
Yeah, the post office. Sometimes it was a UPS store. Sometimes it was FedEx. And they're all close by. I live in a downtown area where everything is close. So
that's nice.
Yeah, it was not more than about 4 or 5 blocks to get anywhere. So we did that, and that went by fine.
They probably got to know you at the post office, right?
Yeah. The UPS guy, he wasn't too thrilled because his room is not ADA compatible, and we'd have to leave the wheelchairs outside, and then I'd go inside and do what I needed to do and then come back. Luckily, at that point, I was off oxygen, so I was able to take things in and out.
Where were all those packages going?
They were going everywhere. New York, California, they were going all over the place.
But all in the U.S.?
Yes, but they had different names on them. The names were definitely not American.
But they didn't ask you to send something overseas to another continent or anything?
No.
Wow.
No. Supposedly there were people who took them to the customs.
For a couple of weeks, Cathy and her husband were happily scootering back and forth to the post office and UPS and FedEx.
Oh, we thought it was great because we could do it together. We were having fun with it. It was keeping us distracted.
In fact, she's doing so well that Cathy has offered a promotion of sorts pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'd been probably working for them maybe it was 3 weeks. And they called me and said, another person called me and said she was over the purchasing. I was doing a great job and she wanted to increase my responsibilities and start me purchasing things.
They want her to start purchasing things. Her job is now going to involve going to stores and buying items like iPads and shipping them off to clients. But there's a problem. She'll have to use her own credit card to buy them, but her card is pretty maxed out. No problem, the boss says. They'll pay off the balance for her. They paid off your credit card. Wow, how did that work?
They had me draw the money from an account, just draw it from their account to pay my credit card. And it went fine.
So they had you log into some kind of bank website and move money from their account into your account?
Yep.
Got it. So she starts acting like a purchasing agent too. What did you pick up?
I picked up, the first item was a watch, an Apple Watch. They were mostly all Apple things. And I started small because that's what I could afford. And then they got bigger as I went on. But I got the first item, I got it shopped. I went out to Apple store. Luckily, it's just down here at the mall. It's a couple blocks away. I went and got it, picked it up, sent them the receipt information. They sent me the packing list or the packing label. I got it back boxed up and put away, sent off. And then I supposedly got the money from the bank, which was fine. You know how you can set up an auto payment from a bank. I just, since the bank was already set up, made up the payment, and that's what she told me to do.
But within a few days, this seemingly ideal job starts to unravel. The trouble first becomes obvious around those credit card payments.
It was about 3 days, and things started bouncing. And the bouncing back, first my payment I didn't notice when my payment for the original thing from the bank bounced, but when the first payment started bouncing, they said it was fraud. I'm like, wait a minute. When I called them on the part where it says where they were bouncing, where these purchases were bouncing, they said, we'll send you a check. The bank has locked that account. They set it to fraud. We'll send you a check. We'll send it out next day. I never got it.
So Cathy's original balance, the debt, is restored on her credit card, and she's got all those purchases on her card too.
These $1,500 a piece. And so I'm like, Uh-oh. And they had made an $800 payment on my account. That's when they paid it off. And
And that bounced too. So now you got a
yeah,
huge credit card bill.
yeah, exactly.
So Cathy is now owed money for all those trips to the post office. She's got a big balance on her credit card, and then the shipping company ships out. So when you first called them and said, hey, this payment is bounced, and they said, we're going to send a check. At that point, did you already realize you were in trouble, or were you somewhere in the middle?
Then I was realizing that I was in trouble. I started panicking at that point because
Because you got to pay rent, right?
I got to pay rent. I don't know how it's going to happen, and I've got no resources.
The job was fake. The online portal was fake. The credit card payment was, in effect, fake. But the pain for Cathy is quite real. Oh, man. Wow. So all told, what was the amount that was stolen from you?
About $9,000 all total because of the $4,500 in the credit card and then the payment that I never got.
The salary you were missing was about $4,500 also?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. And of course, this is a month's worth of distraction and heartbreak, right?
Yes.
Remember, Cathy took this job because she needed the money to pay her bills. Because they pay a lot in rent at their assisted living facility, and Medicaid wasn't helping with the payments anymore. And now she has no pay and a huge credit card bill. But this story has a happy ending, because right about then, their Medicaid appeal comes through. So Cathy no longer needs to work.
Yes. My husband finally got fighting for them to get Medicaid back on for him because he needed it. I was enjoying retirement, and I'm now enjoying retirement again.
Cathy can be retired again. So now, when she and her husband scooter to the mall or to the post office, they're doing it for themselves. But she wanted to come forward and tell her story because she believes that's the only way to help others avoid becoming victims to this same kind of crime.
I feel like I have a lot going on, intelligent person, and I don't fool easy, and yet I got sucked in. And so it doesn't matter how smart or anything you think you are, that you get scammed, and you have to be careful. Everybody has to be on their guard every day, all the time. And it just is for people who don't have the wherewithal. I have a lot of electronic background. I have a lot of things that I understand that most people don't understand. And they got me anyway.
Another thing that just strikes me about your story. So I'm picturing you and your husband. By the way, this is frankly adorable, the two of you on your way to the post office together. But then at the UPS store.
We have had so many people who said you're cuter than you think.
I am sure you are cuter than you think.
We are.
It sounds like you love your husband very much.
He is pretty special, yeah.
But I'm picturing you motoring over to the UPS store where you have to get out of your scooter because it's not handicapped accessible and you got to walk with these packages, right?
Yeah, one at a time. I don't try to kill myself, but that's the thing.
But I'm picturing, I don't know how someone could hear your story and not think this. What kind of criminal encourages someone like yourself to have to get out of your wheelchair or scooter, climb upstairs with packages? That just seems so cruel to me, what they were having you do.
Yeah.
So I asked Cathy, would she ever look online for a job again?
Only if I know the company, like the company that my son and daughter-in-law work for. I tried to work with them, but they didn't have any openings at the time I was looking. Now, if they had openings, I might consider working with them.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense, of course.
But I don't need to now.
Cathy did fill out a complaint with the Better Business Bureau.
I filled out the online form. When I did that, they said they would inform all law enforcement that they needed to.
And how does she feel about the whole experience now?
I'd say that I feel like I got a little egg on my face. You wash it off, you move on.
I like that.
But I don't want it to happen to anybody else. That's what, here in this facility we're in, that's what I do. I'm an ambassador in this facility. because I care about people and I want to help where I can. And my job as an ambassador is to help new people feel like they're part of the community.
That's really nice. I'm sure it's really hard when people move in there, right?
Especially since many of them are moving from their home they've had for 60 years.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. And so it's my job to help them.
Well, that's really lovely. I'm sure you also look around and many of these people could be vulnerable to all sorts of scams, right?
Yep. That's why I watch their electronics.
Good for you. That's great. You're doing quite a service there. We should all be so lucky as to have someone like Cathy looking out for us when we're new in a place. Cathy was the victim of a reshipping scam. Now, they've been around for a long time, but as I'm sure you can tell from her story, these scams have evolved dramatically. Even to the point where these criminals were able to make it look like they made payments on Cathy's credit card. To talk more about the evolution of reshipping scams, we have Melissa Lanning here. She is Executive Director of the Better Business Bureau Institute of Marketplace Trust. She was pretty disturbed by Cathy's story.
This is so unfortunate when there are people who need to find a job and they're, searching to find a solution. And in this case, Cathy needs a job and she's looking to do some work to support her family. And it's very, very unfortunate that she can't just do that and find a job and do that safely instead of being targeted by criminals.
It's such a hard thing for job seekers because we tell people not to share anything about themselves. But when you put a resume online, of course, you have to share things about yourself with the world. And that makes people who are looking for jobs so much more vulnerable, I think.
Yeah, you're right, because you expect to share that information with a potential employer. That makes perfect sense.
And also, when you're looking for a job and someone offers you one, it's exciting, right? I mean, this is what I'm waiting for. So they're in such a vulnerable situation when you're hunting for a job, I think.
Yes, and here's the other thing: if you really, really need that job and you've been waiting for this opportunity, sometimes I think people aren't hearing the red flags as much because they so need this job to come through. They just hope so much that this is going to answer what what they really want. They want the job to pay the rent and to get their family in a better situation. So yeah, I think that emotional roller coaster is really hard, because you want to believe so bad that this is going to answer and address the needs of your family. So yes.
An emotional roller coaster. Looking for a job is certainly that.
I would say one thing I would say about this is that she shouldn't ever beat herself up over this. Instances like this are being reported to the BBB constantly. We're seeing this a lot. Job scams have been on the top 3 riskiest scams in our research since the pandemic, essentially. So we've seen this particular scam type continue to rise and continue to be an issue. I think it really blew up during the pandemic because everyone needed those work from home jobs, but it continues. And now the promise of working from home is one of the things that these scammers are really promising people. And that's one of the things they use to try to attract people to get involved with them and to, basically get a job with them, which we all know is not a real job. So it's unfortunate.
The work from home trend was accelerated dramatically during COVID-19. And that has created a big opening for criminals.
Maybe in the past that these work from home jobs it was a red flag, but it's not as easy to detect that red flag anymore, to your point, because there's more and more companies that are offering remote positions. And so I definitely see that. That is the number one tactic we see in our research with these fake job listings is this stay-at-home working remote. That's like the number one thing. And in our research, we asked people what was the number one motivation for them to respond to the offer that they were seeing, whether the person engaged with them and reached out to them or whether they saw it listed somewhere. And the number one reason was, I really wanted to work remotely. And so that has become a huge, probably number one tactic for scammers that are perpetrating these types of scams.
Melissa says job scams continue to evolve to the point where you might get a job offer that lists a real company and even a real job opening, but it's not a real offer. I'll let her explain.
We are seeing scammers impersonate real businesses, and that is really unfortunate. So One of the things that we suggest is, yes, you want to make sure that the business that's offering you this job is legitimate, but you also need to track down the actual position, the actual job description, and find it on the organization, the company or organization's website, and make sure that it's actually listed there. You have to connect the dots. So even though you get a job offer from a company that really does exist, unfortunately today, these scams have become more and more complex and sophisticated. And so for that, it means now that we need to track down the address. Sometimes we need to check the URL that they're providing of the job description and make sure that's on a real website, not a fake website, and that it's actually a real job description that's been put out there by the company. So unfortunately, I see this situation a lot in our scam reports.
I mean, the old advice would be, Google the name of the company, make sure it's legitimate. But if in some of these cases, as you've described, if you do that, you're going to find a legitimate company because these people are impersonating real companies and maybe even impersonating job listings. And so I think it's really a hard thing for job seekers right now to sort through all of these various permutations of what could be a crime and what is a red flag and what's normal.
I agree. One thing about scammers is they're constantly evolving and changing their tactics, because as we get more consumer education out there and people learn what those red flags are, then the scammers are sort of changing the game on us. And so it's a constant evolution, all of these different scam types. And so, yeah, it is harder. And when you are searching for a job, you have to take that extra couple of steps to do some additional research to just make sure that this is a real person and that this is a real job offer.
And perhaps most alarming, job scams are also being combined with other scams like crypto scams.
One thing that we've just recently seen in the last year is now these scammers are offering to pay people on crypto platforms. So that's another sort of iteration of this job scam, if you will, where now you're doing online work for people. They say, we're going to pay you on this crypto platform, and now you have to actually put money into an account in order to get paid on this platform. And what we've heard through our reports is, they go in to download the pay that they are owed for doing this work, and the platform tells them they need to put in more money. And then we've seen some folks, it takes a little while for them to realize this is a scam. They're never getting paid. Basically, they're the ones that are putting their money in, and they end up losing money that way too. So that's a whole other iteration of job scams now that we're just now seeing.
Gosh, that's terrible. It's like they're combining various scams and layering in the narrative. So if it's the question I was going to ask you until you threw that one on me, that is also really unnerving, is, in the end, what happened to Cathy was a reshipping scam. And reshipping scams are, as old as the internet. The cover story is just more elaborate. But now you might get involved in this and it ends up being a cryptography scam, not a reshipping scam or not a job listing scam. They're all sort of combined together, right?
They are. And you're right. They're taking all of these different tactics that are working, and they're just changing the game and sort of adding in.
And it's important to understand just how relentless these criminals can be.
Overall, I think scammers are willing to spend more time with their targets, and so job scams have always involved more work, right? Whereas an online shopping scam is just they're sending out emails, people are paying money for something they won't get, it's $100. But for this kind of scam, they're willing to put in the extra work to do an interview with the person, and sometimes they're giving them work, like I said, that online job where they're asking them, or reshipping in this case, let's have them do some work and actually reship packages. And so in the end, they're willing to do a little bit more work because they're getting, they're able to rob that person of more money at the end of the day. And in that process, they've built trust with this person because this person thinks they're truly employed by a real employer. And so it's, they're taking that time to build trust with that person, and at the end of the day, the payoff for them is higher. So it's really unfortunate.
So as she described it to me, they actually did pay off part. I guess, sure, she had a balance on her credit card and she couldn't buy things from them unless she paid it down. And they actually did pay off part of her credit card or instructed her to use a website to move money around, which I'm sure was hacked. And then the payment ended up being reversed by the bank a few days later. But it sure appeared to her like she had received money from them, which makes it so much more believable as a crime.
Yes, exactly. It's like when you get that fake official check in the mail and it looks official. It feels legitimate, right? This whole situation. It's like, again, it's about that building the trust with that person.
And all the time the time they're willing to spend is remarkable, really.
Yes, it is. And the other thing I wanted to mention too on this is the payment scheme also shifts constantly. So job scams used to be very much connected to fake check scams, and they still are. But the way that works is the person would do the work, start the work, and when sometimes before they even started the work, they would receive a very official looking check for the remote position, being told that they were either getting training or they were needed to buy office equipment, home office equipment to be able to do the job. And they're told to go to their bank, put the check in the account, and then immediately transfer money to another account to help cover the costs of this. Now that's an overpayment scam. What the person doesn't realize is that that check is bad, and they don't realize that for another week. And in the meantime, they've transferred their own funds to another account. And so now you're seeing this happen with digital payment apps instead of, it depends. They're transferring the money in different ways. And in this case, I see that Cathy has started working on her credit card. She's been putting things on and they're promising to pay it off, and they probably sent that fake check. She doesn't realize it. So she's got to pay her credit card bill, even though she's not getting paid and reimbursed. So they're also changing that up.
Yeah.
That situation up a lot too.
Let's be really clear about one thing. There aren't jobs where you receive packages from someone and mail them on to someone else. That's the biggest red flag of all. That's a reshipping scam. But here are a few other warning signs to watch for.
So know the red flags, first of all, on things that are common red flags. And so if this job offer seems too good to be true, just pause and do some research, as we mentioned earlier. Just some examples of other red flags. If they're reaching out to you and then you're on a third party platform, for example, and that's how they found you, and now they want to talk to you on WhatsApp. So they want to switch communications to another platform. That's a huge red flag. So know that right there is something you need to stop and really spend some time doing research. If they're interviewing you and it's sometimes they're not even interviewing you, they're barely asking some questions and suddenly you got the job. So if you get the job really fast, that's a huge red flag as well. There are some scammers that'll take the time to do research on Zoom. There's others that do text. Believe it or not, there's text interviews that they do. So they do it on the Signal app and they just text back and forth. So that's a huge red flag. That's a very common thing. The other thing, like I said earlier, is really track down an official job description. Make sure that they send it to you. Make sure you track it down to a real website to make sure it's a legitimate business, number one, and do background on the business. So make sure it's a real business. But like I said, there's impersonations as well. So if they're impersonating a well-known business, then make sure you find that job listing on the business's website. It should be listed somewhere. And so it's another thing employers need to think about, is to make sure that they always have a specific place on their website where they're putting all their job descriptions, so people can actually find them. Another red flag I wanted to mention is very vague job descriptions. So if they're not asking for a lot of skills, the reason scammers do this is they can target so many more people. The more skills they put into a job description, the fewer people are going to want to respond, right?
Of course, criminals now know that people have been warned about reshipping scams, so they will often avoid using the word shipping in the job description.
Secret shoppers is another really great example that we see a lot. Basically, somebody's going out to do secret shopping on websites for people to find items and sort of determine how the experience was. This is the kind of thing anyone can really do with a little bit of guidance. And so these are just examples of the kinds of really popular types of jobs that the scammers are putting out there.
So if you are worried that you or someone you know might be in the middle of a scam like this right now, what should you do?
Yeah, so what they want to do is report it right away. They want to stop engaging with the scammer immediately, and they want to collect as much information about the situation as they can. For us, we love to, for example, get URLs of where this was advertised so that we can share this with people. Ultimately, what they need to do is report the scam. And if they've lost money, it's very hard to get money back after you've been scammed. But if you report it, at least, you're helping to protect other people, and you're, making sure that law enforcement's aware. Also, for employment scams particularly, you really need to check your bank accounts because so another aspect we didn't get into here is not just the stealing of the money, but if you fill out an application and you've provided them with personal information, the other thing that's really important for you to do is to just make sure you've buttoned everything down. You check your bank accounts, you check to make sure, go in and make sure you freeze your credit reports, for example, right away. If you've given out, so treat this very much like you've already experienced an identity theft because they have your information. So you want to take all the necessary steps to protect yourself in the future. So it's not just about losing money. It's also making sure that that personal information doesn't get used to impact you later on.
That's a really important point. Even if you never end up reshipping or buying anything, for a criminal like this, if you signed up for an interview or exchanged information in any way, you might become a victim of identity theft. So be alert for that. So I asked Melissa, are these online job platforms doing enough to fight fraud?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think definitely, I know that they're doing work to try to address this. Have they done enough? I don't know. I don't know if they have. I know that we've reached out and talked to some of them and shared our research so that they understand the impact of this. And so I don't know if they have. I think more can always be done. I would love, here's the thing, that there's a lot of education that's happening, but we can't solve this problem only with consumer education because people are hearing so much about scams and there's so much information out there and we have to keep doing that, but there's got to be other solutions. There's got to be technical solutions where we stop these before they target people. And so I do think more needs to be done to try to keep these scammers off these platforms. So I would say, I know there's things that they're trying to do. Do we need them to do more? Yes, I think they definitely.
And a related question, so if you are a job seeker and you see something that's sort of obviously a crime, you're not going to go to the police with that, but what should you do to report that to someone who will do something about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important point, Bob. Even if you haven't lost money or personal information to this thing, if you've only just seen it out there and you know it's a scam, report it to either, BBB Scam Tracker is a great place to report. We share all of our data with FTC. You can report it directly to FTC. You can also report it to IC3, which is the FBI. So if you see those instances out there, take a second and report it. Again, BBB will publish that and put it up on our platform so that it's available when people go in and search for scams. The more we can do to highlight this for everyone and pass on that information, the more we'll protect more people in the future from all types of scams, but specifically for job scams.
So, I think our listeners love homework. So if someone sees a really suspicious ad, they can report it to the BBB.
Yes, please do so.
Really mechanically, how do they do that?
So you go to bbb.org/scam tracker and you would just fill out a form. There's a very simple form, basically says report a scam right on the platform. You open it up and it will ask you some questions about what you saw. So if you didn't lose money, if you're reporting it on behalf of someone else, it allows you to do that. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be an experience that actually happened to you, but you can go through all the questions and you can even upload a picture of it so that we have that as well in the database.
Given all the reports of scams that Melissa sees, she's got a really important message for Perfect Scam listeners.
The only other thing I want to mention to folks is just, again, if this happens to you, don't beat yourself up. This is happening to a lot of people. These are criminals that are very well trained. These scams are incredibly sophisticated. And so please report the scam, but also please be kind to yourself. This is, like I said, this isn't something that's your fault. And this is something that the other thing I will just mention, Bob, we have a scam survival toolkit on our website. So if you go to Scam Tracker, it's right in the top right-hand corner. If this happens to you, you can go to that survival toolkit, tell it what happened, and it will give you a tailored description of what you need to do next based on how you paid, where you were targeted, whether or not you're having a hard time sleeping, so that we'll provide mental health resources and so forth. So it's a really great resource for folks who are really struggling after they've been targeted by a scammer, and I would encourage folks to check that out as well.
For The Perfect Scam, I'm Bob Sullivan. If you have been targeted by a scam or fraud, you are not alone. Call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Their trained fraud specialists can provide you with free support and guidance on what to do next. Our email address at The Perfect Scam is theperfectscampodcast@aarp.org, and we want to hear from you. If you've been the victim of a scam or you know someone who has, and you'd like us to tell their story, write to us. That address again is theperfectscampodcast@aarp.org. Thank you to our team of Scam Busters, Associate Producer Annalee Embry, Researcher Becky Dodson, Executive Producer Julie Getz, and our audio engineer and sound designer Julio Gonzalez. Be sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. For AARP's The Perfect Scam, I'm Bob Sullivan.